I do think Alligator Alcatraz is unfair, but not for the reasons the libs do. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment on the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. The show starts now.
I think our viewers at home should note that this is air-conditioned facility, yes, so if any of the news claims are keeping them out in the hot, humid South Florida, that is wrong. It's probably 62 degrees here.
To be honest.
Or 72.
Hey, yep. Biden wanted me in here, okay? He wanted me. It didn't work out that way, but he wanted me in here, that son of a...
Alligator Alcatraz is a beautiful complex designed to temporarily house illegal alien detainees, primarily the most violent and evil of the bunch, before they are finally and permanently removed from our great country. The facility also has its very own airstrip, so as to expedite the get the hell out of here aspect of Trump's immigration approach. It's not even really so much his approach, rather just federal law that he's actually enforcing. The facility is quite nice, probably too nice for its inhabitants, honestly. It has a max capacity of 3,000 detainees and 1,000 staffers, over 200 cameras, 400 plus security personnel, as well as legal advisors and medical personnel. Other available resources include legal services, clergy, laundry, AC, and even a rec yard. Or as joyless Ann Reed would call it, a concentration camp for brown people.
We tried to forget about him, but Ron DeSantis is still governor of Florida. He took the Comfy Couch hosts on a tour of the concentration camp that he's building in Florida, in order to round up people, brown people, and throw them in a camp because he doesn't want them in Florida.
Joy Reid is a moron, and so are the people protesting this facility, by the way. There's nothing libs won't protest. They always seem to have so much extra time on their hands in the middle of the workday. But I think my favorite ones are the real Mother Earthy ones who are against the construction of this facility on ancestral land. Especially interesting because they are so quick to preserve sacred ancestral land, but also simultaneously believe borders are just imaginary lines. So which one is it, ma'am? Look, Alligator Alcatraz is an inspired idea. I love it. But I do feel badly for the alligators, though, because they have to share space with criminal, illegal alien invaders, and that's just not fair. I guess they will get a free meal, though, should one of these detainees try to get fresh. Well, then it's chomp chomp adios.
And with the Alligator Alcatraz, it's the idea that if some illegal immigrant escapes, they just get eaten by an alligator or a snake or something.
I guess that's the concept. This is not a nice business. I guess that's the concept. If the snakes are fast, but alligators are, but we're going to teach them how to run away from an alligator, okay? If they escape prison, how to run away. Don't run in a straight line. Run like this. And you know what? Your chances go up about 1%.
Free advice from our great president. Joining me now is the Daily Signal's national correspondent, Tony Kinnett. All right, Tony, what do you think about Alligator Alcatraz? I think it's a great idea. I think it's better than Disney World and Disneyland and Universal Studios all combined. I love it. What's your take?
I mean, first of all, it's brilliant. It's a great way to use state and federal property, but also seeing Trump essentially get out the Charles Barkley basketball advice. You got to zig and zag, man. You can't just stay on the same line because the alligators will get you. That's peak entertainment. This is exactly what we voted for. And again, if I get to see Joy Reid lose her marbles in the process, I'm struggling to see a downside here. It's fantastic.
Well, yeah, natural blonde Joy Reid is a moron, and she has to say stupid things because she's trying to promote, I believe, a podcast. So that's why she says those things. She doesn't, I believe, really believe that they're building a concentration camp for brown people. But I want to dig into this a little bit because I'm seeing a lot of liberals try to use that line. And they're morons. And I think that they're intellectually and morally dishonest. But the number of people that I've seen on social media, whether they're pundits or just regular folks on there saying, like, this is so awful. They're detaining these people. They have to sleep in bunk beds. They have to be caged. And I want to gently remind these folks, these are prisoners. Like, how else would you like to detain people? They're getting a bed with a mattress, some of them bunk beds. And yes, they are being detained because they're prisoners. I guess that escapes their mind. they have been led astray to believe that illegal aliens and violent criminal aliens should not be detained, that they should just be out and about to just run amok. But they've gone so far in their broken brains that they really do view a detention facility detaining people as a problem. How did we get there?
Well, we got there from the Biden administration doing the exact opposite and claiming that Catholic parents who didn't want kids to be shown sex toy collections in picture books were somehow domestic terrorists. But all of a sudden, if you put illegal aliens who broke the law coming in here, who broke the law staying here, and many of whom broke the law in many other ways, like the guy that CBS just tried to call a Colorado grandfather who had a string of assault and abuse and shoplifting charges, that if you put that guy in a cage, otherwise known as a jail, famously, need the cages so that people don't leave, the same reason you need walls, or in this case, alligators. They're shocked and amazed by this, because usually in Los Angeles, those people are released out on the street with a couple of my tax dollars to fund their next crime spree.
It's so wild to me that they've gotten to that point where you can show them that someone's a really bad person. You can show them all the horrible things that these people have done beyond just coming to this country illegally. You can show them all of this. You can show them the evidence of that. But because they hate Donald Trump, they will again say, no, due process. Give them the benefit of the doubt. And when they say due process, it's also intellectually and morally dishonest, because there's nothing that can convince these people that these people are violent. It's like, well, I would have had to have been there when he to that person, or I would have had to have been there and watched the murder firsthand. Otherwise, due process. And we need all this evidence. And it's always the benefit of the doubt for the felon or the con or the illegal or the thug or the monster. It's so weird that they've gotten to that point, but I guess at least they're honest about it. Speaking of that same concept, I actually was thinking about this a lot this morning as I watched the Diddy verdict come down. I don't know how you feel about it, but I think it's crazy because I find a lot of liberals are saying like, oh, we need Diddy locked up, right? So he was, the charges that he was actually convicted on are basically prostitution. Like, lock him up. He shouldn't be allowed to roam about because of these prostitution charges. They want to see Diddy behind bars. But the violent, criminal, illegal alien gang members, they don't want to see them behind bars. So regardless of how you feel about the Diddy verdict, I find that rather interesting. So let's dig in there.
Yeah, I think it's a really good place to dig in too, because it shows I don't know if you'd call it the juxtaposition of these two theories on how we view society. So yeah, Diddy should be in prison. Again, this is why you don't go on RICO charges. If we didn't learn enough the last time, RICO charges are really hard to pin down. And you could have gotten Diddy on a number of things, but they wanted to essentially use this as a platform to charge 50 or 60 other people, which is not a great way to do these kind of prosecutions. Get the guy for the gross child abusing, innocent victim abusing crimes that he committed.
But were there children involved? Because I didn't see any evidence about children being involved in the Diddy case, at least that was brought forward.
There were a couple of testimonies that suggested that Diddy might have had an interest in like some younger guys, but they had suggested they hadn't come out as forthwith because they were really nervous during the time of their...
I don't know, man. That's kind of a stretch, though. And listen,
What do you mean?
I'm not a Diddy apologist here by any means, but I did follow this trial pretty closely. And so has, my friends at Fox News, CB Cotton has been on this thing from day one, and I've been watching it unfold. And whereas I don't think Diddy's a great person, I wouldn't want to hang out with Diddy. I do think that the jury got it right here. I think that, again, you're right about the overcharging the RICO thing, saying that this man was running like some giant enterprise to traffic people.
I don't think he's intelligent enough to run a giant enterprise.
I do think that Diddy is very intelligent. I do think that. But I think that it was a big stretch. Like, I think that the most that you could get this guy on is that he is an abuser, that he enjoys freaky, gross things, that he probably uses his money and his influence to influence and manipulate those around him. I think that those are very valid. But I don't know if that rises to the level of being, this mobster or somebody who is this horrible monster. I don't think that they proved that to me. And if there were children involved and that was brought forward and it was like, hey, listen, because like the R. Kelly stuff, I think that's a completely different can of worms here. But for the Diddy stuff, I don't know. I think that he's not a great person. I don't think that this, shines a great light on his moral capacity. But
Yeah, for sure.
I don't really know if he deserves to be behind bars for this.
So the argument that I would probably make here is that this all comes down to the left Hitlerizing every single person over the last couple of decades. So if you have one person that's done one bad thing, that means they're Hitler. And we have to charge them on the highest level of crime that we can to throw them behind bars for 500 years and all of this other nonsense. When in reality, there are different degrees of crimes that an individual like Diddy might have committed. And again, from some of the testimonies that I saw from some of the examinations of these freak offs and other events that were being hosted and that Diddy was trying to get people for, I think that you could have looked at in kind of a deeper investigation, how was he communicating with people in the larger music and the Hollywood acting spheres over his time hosting these freak offs that would have maybe led to a more drawn out case, but one that would have maybe provided a bit more substantial justice for the victims. But that wasn't what was done here. Like I said, that stretch for Rico going after, well, was he just going for the prostitutes or was he trafficking the prostitutes? This is something that usually you have to get Comey to come up with as some kind of a charge.
Yeah, and again, I don't think Diddy is a great person, and I don't want it to come off like I'm defending him. But if I'm looking at this legally, I think that the jury probably did in hearing all this testimony, and they heard more than we did. I think it's hard for people to wrap their minds around the whole notion of you're being trafficked or you're being held hostage as a sex worker when this happened over a decade. And when you have these people who are not only getting paid and making money off this, getting their rent taken care of, but they're also sending text messages to him saying that like they missed the freak offs and
Counter
stuff.
affirmative. Exactly.
Yeah. And I understand that some people in those situations, it's like the Stockholm syndrome. It's like the battered wife. I get that. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist. And for a lot of these people, it probably does. When you are wrapped up in this, maybe you do kind of long for that lifestyle because you've been blinded by it for so long.
Because it warps your mind over time, right?
Yeah. But also part of it, though, when he's paying your rent or when you get to, hang out with celebrities and you're going to these parties with celebrities and you're around Diddy and he can advance your career and he can pay for things and, he can get you nice gifts or he can take care of your family in other ways. I'm sure that that's a form of manipulation. Is it criminal, though? Like, at what point are these, if they are all adults, at what point do they, maybe shoulder at least some of the, I won't call it blame, but it's like, I wasn't convinced that they couldn't leave the situation. I wasn't convinced that they weren't sticking around because they loved the celebrity and the money and the luxury. I wasn't convinced that they didn't at least at one point enjoy these freak offs and then maybe regret them. I don't think any of this rises to being criminal, though.
I mean, I'm sure they did. There's always, pleasure in sin for a season, as the good book says. But I think I'll put it back to this. Unlike Joy Reid, you and I are syndicated. We're on the air trying to make articulate points. You have to be precise about legal matters. That doesn't mean that you or I are approving of Diddy's actions or saying, oh, he got off too easy or he was charged too harshly, anything like that. The precise language of the legal terminology matters here because in future cases, you want to see the maximum amount of justice given. And just because we sit here and we parse over, was the right amount of justice served, was the right testimony brought forward, the right charges, that's an essential thing that someone doing any kind of broadcast news or analysis should do. Joy Reid gets on air and says, well, it's just, a concentration camp for brown people. Whereas some of us out here are trying to pick apart the details because we owe that to our audience. They don't have time to steep in this 24 hours a day like we do.
Yeah. So I think the jury got it right in this case. I think that the state overcharged, or it was a federal case. I think it was overcharged. And that's
the RICO thing for sure.
Yeah, I think it was over. I think that they wanted to score a slam dunk because Diddy is Diddy. And I think if Diddy wasn't Diddy, I don't even think this thing would have gone to trial. I really don't. They wanted to get a win. They wanted to dunk on Diddy. And okay, but you kind of shot
Eyes
for the
bigger
moon
than the
there.
stomach.
And you didn't land in the stars. I'll just put it that way. So we'll wait and see how this all unfolds. Let's just go to the other legal stuff because as long as we're on the topic, I want to get your take on the Kohberger stuff. People are really pissed that he was offered a plea deal. People are really pissed that he's not going to get the death penalty, that we're not going to see this thing go to trial. What was your initial reaction when you heard that news?
I really find a lack of transparency in these kind of deals to be really sickening because what you have is a situation where they lay out a series of crimes. There was a lot of evidence for a lot of misconduct, a lot of disturbing things that people want to see brought forward in a court of law. And then you get these kind of plea deals offered these days. It's really a weird strand of plea deals that have been offered out of state and federal courts over the last 20 to 30 years in which they're just kind of brought again, just like lawyers haggling in the nighttime breeze. And I think that the lack of transparency is continuing this kind of erosion in institutional faith. And I that may not sound like the most deep intellectual take on this particular matter, but I'm tired of waking up every single morning and finding another plea deal on the books, just thrown out, easy breezy, that there's a lack of transparency behind in the decision process. I feel like there's a lot of legal documents we're never going to get to see because, everything's all sealed away. Sorry, see ya.
Well, here's my perspective on it. What part of this do you think, and the families aside, of course, those directly impacted, but those that are just upset with the plea deal, just everyday folks who have just been watching this thing from afar for years now, what part of it do you think is people just loving trial porn? And they just wanted this big murder, it's a very sexy, salacious trial that would have gone down. You've got the murder of young, attractive college kids. You've got this character, the knife and the Amazon and the, his phone pinging, and you've got all this stuff. So what part of it do you think, if you're looking at people cynically, as I unfortunately tend to do you think people are mad about the plea deal just because they wanted to see this go to trial and they wanted entertainment? Are people pissed that there was a plea deal because they wanted to watch the trial of Kohberger and they wanted to just
spectacle versus justice?
Yeah, they just wanted to watch the trial. So that's my perspective on it. I think that people are upset that there's a plea deal because they wanted the blockbuster trial of the summer. They wanted to watch it. They wanted to kind of be like the Diddy thing. They wanted to sit back and they wanted to.
That's a good point.
They wanted to say, I want to hear all the stuff. How did he murder him? I want to hear from the roommate.
The true crime podcastinistas, that kind of a thing.
So I think people are more upset about that than the fact that he got a plea deal. Because let's just be honest about the plea deal. He's never going to see the light of day. So the death penalty is off the table here. But here's my perspective. And it's, again, I understand the family because the family wants the closure. They want to go through the trial. They want to get their closure. They want to see this guy get the death penalty. And I understand it from the family's perspective. I really, really do. But if I'm looking at it from somebody who's not a family member, who's just an observer, I understand why a plea deal was offered because this guy is clearly guilty. It's pretty obvious with the evidence. To go through a 2 or 3 month trial and just drag everything out just to come to the conclusion that, if his DNA is on the frickin' knife and he ordered the knife from Amazon and his phone pinged next to the house, this guy's probably guilty. So I understand the frustration because people wanted to see death penalty because of the horrible things that he did. However, when I'm looking at it, I think a lot of people just wanted to watch a trial. And I don't think that they should hide behind I just wanted closure for the victims. Or did you just want to watch a trial?
That's a very good critique. And I think that there's a big divide. There may be more generationally here, maybe regionally here. I'd have to think about it for a little bit and I will actually. I think I might actually come back to this one. But I think that if you are someone who wanted to see just the trial, that is, again, the true crime podcast people, those that are just obsessed with the Law and Order celebrity style play out in front of the cameras and things, there is a very almost kind of a Romans at the Colosseum thirst that a lot of American society has that's not really based on justice. It's just based on the spectacle. For me, because I'm a former education guy and I've seen the impact, I think there are a lot of parents who are sickened by the abuse of children and do want to see the example brought forward in the death penalty because it's a warning to those who might get something in the future. The exact makeup of who wants the spectacle and who wants perhaps the warning through, again, the execution for these kind of crimes, that's something that I think is really worth looking at because that's the soul of America. Who wants this more and what's going to embody our view of justice more? Yeah.
I just feel like people wanted to watch a trial, and I think that's why they're upset at the plea deal because I think there's a lot of money in it. You saw the coverage of the Diddy trial. Anytime you have these high-profile things, you get a lot of cameras, you can do a lot of stories. I think there was more a thirst for a trial than people being mad about the death penalty not being on the table.
It drives clicks. Yeah, social media clicks. And I think, and we even for the first time yesterday for yesterday's show, we put Diddy as part of the thumbnail, and I didn't like doing it. I was like, I don't like the idea of the spectacle that I'm luring someone in because there's a picture of Diddy on the screen. And I thought it was news that was worth talking about, but there is that little bit of a hesitation, I think, that comes in with, am I driving spectacle or am I actually talking about it because it is what people find essential for the news coverage? So no, I'm really glad that you brought it up that way. I think it's a good question.
Yeah. I want to talk about some other stuff too. Let's talk about the Pam Bondi and her going after LA for its sanctuary city policy. I think it's pretty funny. Our Bill Malusian kind of got the back and forth between Karen Bass, because she was named, by the way, in the lawsuit, and the back and forth. And she was asked, actually, if she would consider having a meeting with ICE. Now, we're talking ICE agents and federal agents, right? These are Americans. Some of them also might be her own constituents, right? And they're people that are enforcing federal immigration law within the city of Los Angeles that she's supposedly the mayor of. And she said she wouldn't even meet with ICE because the only discussion she wants to have is them leaving. And I thought I mean, she's stupid. So, but I thought that was a really narcissistic, indulgent, stupid comment to make. But I love the way that they went back at her and said, I'm sure that there's an upcoming diplomatic trip to Ghana. I thought that was a great dunk by, the assistant director of ICE Office of Public Affairs to that. And I think Karen Bass is a moron. And I think the more that she goes on local media and national media and talks about how we so badly need illegal immigrant slave labor to keep our economy afloat, I think she makes herself look worse. And she should probably stop. And someone should probably tell her to stop. But nobody's telling her to stop.
Well, there's no leadership in the party right now to tell her to stop. That's the thing. I mean, you have Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries or Chris Murphy from Connecticut, and they'll get on camera and they'll just start saying things that are kind of the Freudian slip stuff that they're now fully embracing. And Ken Martin running the DNC, he has no power at all. I mean, Politico's leaked how many calls now where Ken Martin has basically said he's emasculated and cuckolded by his own young progressives. There's no leadership to restrain. But regarding Karen, I think the real question that I have regarding Bondi's case here, again, kind of goes back to this Diddy flow. And I promise I'm not just trying to link everything in our conversation here together. Do you think they're going a little bit too grandiose on an investigation? Obviously, they haven't brought up any charges yet. Are you worried that they might? And again, I'm sorry, I know you're asking me the question, not the other way around, but this is an open question I have.
Yeah.
Are they going to go and try to charge her on something far too large that she can eke out and squeak out from? Because that's not what Americans or Californians deserve.
I think just cut the funding. Honestly, these sanctuary cities, like, this is enough. Them flouting federal immigration law is just enough is enough. So cut the funding from these people. And, we have to do it through all the lawsuits, and they sue. And every time that there's a lawsuit between the DOJ suing this state and that state, it's really just a back and forth. It's not, it never
Does funding have to be cut via like a lawsuit or an indictment? Or like with the Harvard stuff, can they just say you're violating this statute, no more dough to your home turf?
Well, I think because it's a city and it's a, Los Angeles, I don't think they can just say, oh, cutting it off. Unfortunately, I think there's a legal process they have to go through, and this is the start of it. And it's probably never going to actually go anywhere, but I think it sends a message that you're not going to have these sanctuary policies anymore. I think the far more effective thing to do is just to send more ICE agents, honestly. I think the more that they bitch and scream and moan about it, I think you send more. And every time Karen Bass goes on public TV, I think you send 5 more agents. And I think every time she opens her mouth, you send 5 more. And I think you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. It's like, okay, you keep about it, and now we just sent more. And it's like, shut up. Shut up.
Yeah.
Because now we're not just going after the violent criminal ones. We're going after the ones that are still illegally in our country. And guess what? Those are going to be people that you think prop up your economy. So every time you talk, more ICE agents are coming. And then if you want to have your people attack and assault them, then we're going to send in more National Guard. And on the process shall go until you understand that you cannot compete with the Trump administration on this. So I think that's the strongest thing they can do. But I think legally they got to sue LA and they've got to, go through the process of this. But I think that all of these people, I think they're walking on shaky turf here, trying to legitimize their coddling of illegal aliens. And I think at some point they're going to realize that.
Oh, absolutely. And this is the reason why the Supreme Court decision on slapping down national injunctions was the biggest win in 40 years. Because again, with all of these various little judges trying to wrest control of, for example, the National Guard away from the Trump administration, trying to wrest away certain legal policies like funding cuts to certain areas, funding holds and freezes to certain areas, now that's a lot more difficult for some district court judge from Connecticut or southern Idaho to rule on something regarding California or James Boasberg in D.C. Now you're actually going to see the Trump administration not just maybe send in more ICE agents, sends in a small detachment, sends in a platoon. Senate of the National Guard, detach a core group that's able to assist in making sure that ICE agents aren't being targeted. You can do all kinds of things. You can do jamming via the Signal Corps. You can do many different styles of military support for federal agents who are under threat. We've seen this far more than just like sending in the Guard carte blanche, but sending in resource and assistance units that I'm sure Tom Homan could find very good use for, and judges aren't going to be able to say boo.
Another question for you on this point. Do you think we should redo the census early and get the illegal aliens off of it?
Absolutely. As quick as they can do it before midterms, God willing.
Yeah. I think it's so funny. I was seeing, of course, the liberals say, like, this is awful. You're gerrymandering. This is how Republicans are trying to win elections. And as they're saying it, they don't realize how stupid they sound, because they're actually admitting that without illegal alien invaders in this country, Democrats couldn't win. They couldn't win. They wouldn't have the seats. They wouldn't have the power that they have.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it's great. The admission is great. They're like, no, you can't do this. Don't take away our constituents.
Of course, because they realize that if there aren't that many Californian citizens, not only does the number of electoral votes decrease, the number of congressmen and women from California decreases. So if Maxine Waters is out there shaking her jowls alone and scared on the floor because all of a sudden her posse of 5 other people who are just going to echo whatever she's saying aren't there anymore, well, gee, then all of a sudden the Republican majority grows a little bit larger, and the Democrats have a harder time to gerrymander these weird curly Q shoestring districts that they have in places like LA and San Francisco. And you can say the same about New York, and to see Texas, to see Ohio, to see Indiana, to see Florida, to see other states around the country that people have moved to, gaining electoral seats, which means, again, congressmen and women. Now you see a representative body that is less dependent on moderate Republicans in New York who want me to pay for their SALT deductions. And you see more representatives from my neck of the woods who don't want to spend all of our farmland on solar energy fields.
Right. Well, speaking of these idiots in New York, the Mamdani stuff, I'm conflicted on it, because part of me likes it when he talks and says things, because I think it's just such a dunk for Republicans. But part of it also really stresses me out, because I do know that he does have at least some figment of a base there that's significant. But here he is, and I love the way people are like, he's not a communist, he's not all that, he just wants to, seize the means of production. But this is his genius plan for communes to solve the housing crisis. It's so funny. He wants communes, but then they'll about Alligator Alcatraz, but yet they actually want communes. Okay, let's take a listen to this.
But to go further toward the Vienna model, we'll have to go beyond the market. We can establish community land trusts to gradually buy up housing on the private market and convert it to community ownership. We can give tenants a right of first refusal to buy out their landlords when buildings go up for sale. And we can fully commit to a new era of social housing, ending subsidies for luxury housing development and using our wealth to build beautiful, high-quality social housing projects that offer good homes and strong communities to everyone. We won't decommodify housing overnight, but we know what we have to do, and we have history to guide us.
Yeah, so Section 8 for everybody. That sounds nice. Ever been around Section 8 housing? It's not great. It's not a fun place to be. It's not certainly where I would want to spend my time. And also, probably not a good idea to make that the norm. Yeah, we're just going to buy up all those luxury buildings, and we're just going to, fill it with people who are going to have rent control. And, there's no way that could go wrong at all. There's no way that could cause a giant problem. But, this guy, he thinks he's got it all figured out.
So whenever politicians start using little catchphrases like we have history to guide us, I enjoy watching certain phrases carry merit, and then certain phrases are just used to make you sound more intelligent. And I know, shocker, that the son of the Hollywood producer and Columbia professor would want to come off as artificially intelligent, yet here we are. History to guide us, there's not one case of government-funded housing anywhere around the world that's been a success, especially not commune development. The very first time it was tried in Paris, the Paris communes, Paris burnt down 3 times in like 2 months. You can even look at New York City the last time they tried something similar to this. New York, people were burning down their buildings for the insurance money in the 70s. So Mamdani thinks that he's going to come in and govern by fiat so that Bernie Sanders can finally have his policies in New York City. It's not going to work. And every time he gets out there and says he's not a communist, another clip is unearthed of him saying, I'm a communist. I want communes and to seize the means of production. So, I mean, it's a hilarious gift. Because he's turning all of these moderates over into, if not into the Republican coalition, at least independents who are just really getting cheesed off at this nonsense.
Here's my question, though. There's a lot of rich people that live in New York City, and they don't vote
Sure.
Republican. I'm thinking of a few, just kind of off the top of my head. The ladies of The View, Whoopi, Joy Behar. I'm thinking of Andy Cohen of Bravo fame, and many, many others. De Niro, I mean, you name it. You name the, I mean, we wouldn't have time to name all of the rich Hollywood and entertainment celebrities who live in New York City in beautiful luxury high-rise apartments. I don't know, Tony. Do you think that they're going to give up their luxury high-rise apartments? Are they going to cede those to the communes so that they can divide up all of their luxury housing and make affordable housing for everybody? I don't see Whoopi giving up her luxury high-rise for the good of the commune, but I wonder if we should ask.
I mean, yeah, I would love to see the same for the ones that were supposed to provide asylum and sanctuary cities for illegal immigrants. They're not opening up their penthouse suites for those coming in from the Venezuelan prisons. But of course, in this situation, it's always the middle class families who end up stymieing that, or excuse me, who end up carrying that kind of a burden, or maybe upper middle class who might have apartments in what's considered a gentrified area of the city that's going to get it all stripped away and taken away so that Whoopi Goldberg can cackle on The View about how justice is being served or whatever.
I think that if they do elect this guy and he starts doing half of the things, and he can't do a lot of these things, by the way, but if he just started to, I would love to see their faces. I would love to see Whoopi's face and Andy Cohen's face when they said, you know, that luxury high rise you have in Hudson Yards or Upper East Side or wherever it may be. You're not going to have that anymore. We don't think you need that much space, so we're going to divvy it up. And then even if they don't go that far, you know, you're at the top, you're in the penthouse, but all the floors underneath of you, that's going to be affordable housing.
Like what's going on in Oregon with the Antifa crews that are going into the apartment building and are waking up all of the other residents. Remember, you've seen The Dark Knight Rises with Bane?
Yeah.
Back in the aughts. There's a scene where this rich guy who had funded the villain to power gets to the point he says, well, I gave you everything. And Bane goes, oh, you think this gives you power over me? And then throws him out of the building. That's what you're going to see with all of these rich elites. Oh, I funded the movement. I marched. I had the black flag on my window and on my Instagram profile. Nope, sorry, eat the rich, out with the rest, up against the wall, just like in China, just like in Russia, just like every Soviet state ever existed.
You're exactly right. I'd love to see their faces, though. If you just told them, hey, you know what we're going to do? Your building, that's the new Section 8. The bottom floors here, you could even stay in the penthouse, but like everything underneath of you, affordable, rent-controlled, government-subsidized housing is going to go in on your building. Something tells me that the love and compassion, the compassion that they would feel would drain pretty quickly. I'd love that experiment, though. We should try it. Thank you so much, Tony, for being here, for diving into all of the hot news of the day. I hope to have you back.
Tommy, thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Defund the police, abolish ICE, due process, no human is illegal, outreach over incarceration. Yeah. The Democrats ought to just be honest. They don't want to lock anyone up. And I have some final thoughts.
Fiscally, if we're talking about the fiscal cost, it costs New York City more than $500,000 a year to incarcerate someone on Rikers. And to put someone in a year of supportive housing, it's about $50,000 a year.
So whether it's lefties about Alligator Alcatraz or that communist Mamdani squawking about replacing the NYPD with social workers and outreach, or our old favorite Kamala Harris and her word salad about re-examining ICE and starting from scratch, or their passionate and stupid support for defund the police, cashless bail, activist DAs, and even the sick and twisted affinity for monsters like Luigi Mangione. Let's just call it what it is. Democrats don't want anyone locked up. They want violent people out and about, American ones, illegal ones, all of them. They completely reject the reality that some people are unsavable, a danger to others, and should not be outside. They used to at least just push the narrative of rehabilitation, that if someone commits a crime and does their time, they should be welcomed back into society with open arms. That used to at least be the cover tagline. But not anymore. Now it's just empty the jails, close the prisons, bask in the free-for-all, and leave the good and decent folks to fend off their little social experiments with a travel-sized bottle of pepper spray. No tasers or guns, of course. Those are too assaulty for the cons and felons and freaks and monsters to endure. And as for the criminal illegal aliens, hell, I think they want to protect them even more than the American-born and bred violent ones. That's the mindset of their party now. In the schoolyard game of cops and robbers, they cheer for the robbers. And you really have to wonder why. Are their brains really that broken? Do they truly believe releasing the most unstable and violent among us is the compassionate thing to do? Or is it about something else for them? I can't quite put my finger on it, but I theorize that all roads lead back to chaos. If you allow and you encourage anarchy to the point where decent folks are afraid, well, then those decent folks are easier to control and manipulate. Think the COVID times. Whatever it is or whyever they're doing it, we can't allow it. Law and order, and don't apologize for it. Don't play into their twisted version of compassion. That's a gaslight. I do believe in redemption, I really do, but not at the expense of my family or your family. So if it's cold and heartless to cheer for Alligator Alcatraz or CCOT or Guantanamo Bay or the death penalty, well, call me the Grinch, because I'm here for it. And those are my final thoughts. Please be sure to tune in live tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. Catch full episodes on Outkick and Fox Nation and FoxNews.com. Also, please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless from Nashville. God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.